I am joined now by the man, the myth, the legend, Stephen Crowder. Yeah. Stephen, thank you for being here.
I didn't know if you were, okay, good. There was a pause. I didn't know if you were going to say, hey, Stephen, but I guess I answered after the legend. Yeah.
You did. I wanted drama. I wanted to build up the drama because you are now in a state that is opening up after much mayhem and chaos, after the Laredo police busted up the home cosmetology business, after this crazy shutdown that you were correct about from the very beginning.
Yeah, I hate to say that I called it. And like you said, I think even though I said this is not nearly as big of a deal as people are making it out to be, I understand it was prudent to enforce some kind of a quarantine or lockdown in the absence of evidence. But now we would be quarantining the sick, which is unheard of in the face of overwhelming evidence. And that's the issue. And the thing is, too, the Imperial study, the guy who created this study, no one has information. What I'm realizing is this is a lot like the 77 cents in the dollar with women. Remember when Barack Obama quoted that? And we were all saying, well, hold on a second, does he not have Google? Can he not just go to the Enterprise Institute and realize that this is clearly incorrect? No one fact-checked the Imperial study. When you ask the guy who ran it, this is from computer model data from 13 years ago that he hasn't disclosed. It's not physically possible. It was never physically possible for 2.5 million Americans to die. All lives lost matter. We have to say that all the time. Frontline workers, healthcare workers, nurses, the 9/11 firefighters who went into Tower 2, nothing compared to today's healthcare workers. We understand it. They're the ultimate heroes of all time. I get it, but we have to be honest about the data at this point.
That's right. And you know what it seems like increasingly? Your point on the Imperial study is exactly right. No one else had any data. No one else had a study. So you had this one study at every politician in America, every politician in the world wanted to clamor to cover their own rear end. So they say, okay, it's going to be 3 million. We're going to shut down everything. I kind of get it at that time. If all the political incentives are basically saying shut down so that you don't have all this death on your hands. But what about now? Now we're like 5-6 weeks later. None of these predictions have materialized. And yet some of the politicians are doubling down on the lockdowns.
Yeah, it really is. It flies in the face of all evidence. And to me, when they say you're anti-science, well, hold on a second. What science do you have on your side at all, Nancy Pelosi? Yeah. You were telling people to eat out in Chinatown in March. Let's be clear about this. And now the science says at most, according to even Cuomo, a 0.5% death rate, more likely 0.1% now that we've done the antibody tests. Now keep in mind, at least 90 to 95% of those are people who are over the age of 80 who are sick. Speaking of do you know what the first COVID death was in Texas that was registered?
No.
It was a 97-year-old who was in the ICU with cardiac complications. And then they wrote COVID. Well, hold on a second. I think 97, I think being 12 years past life expectancy in this country had something to do with it. So the numbers that we have right now, I am entirely convinced are actually way too high. I don't have the data on that. But every time I look at an individual case, I go down a list and, the actual cases that we have available, I scan and go, all right, let me just throw a dart at the board. And the person was 92 years old and diabetes.
Well, this is the issue in New York. New York in one day added 3,700 deaths to the tally. But nobody got tested. So maybe they could have had it, right? But it seems like now the idea is that if you go to a hospital, you have coronavirus. And if you die at the hospital, you're going to be marked down as a coronavirus death. Obviously, those data are going to be a little bit unreliable if we're going to be looking back and trying to prevent this kind of thing in the future.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is a conflict between the theoretical and what's actually happening in the real world. So there were theoretical models, right? This started with 2.5 million deaths. Then it was minimum, I think, was it 140 to 225 or was it 100,000 to 240? Right. Right. And by the way, then they lowered it to 60,000 before social distancing would have even kicked in. Let's keep that in mind. So all of these projections are based on your guess is as good as mine. Again, most of it seems to be based on the Imperial College study. But the real world data that we have, the USS Comfort had to leave because really there weren't enough people. All of the new hospitals that were built, at least the ones in Seattle, where was it? Was it in Boston where they actually took their garden and they were going to, now they've reopened it back up, or I guess they've shut it down, not opened it back up, but it's not being lined with hospital beds anymore.
Look at Javits Center in New York.
Yes, right. Javits Center in New York. All of these extra hospitals, they haven't been needed. The 40,000 ventilators, they topped out around 4,000. You look at so the numbers as far as jobs lost, those are real numbers. The numbers of hospital workers who have been laid off or furloughed because they don't have enough people going into the hospitals and they can't provide non-essential services like stents in your heart. Those are real numbers. They were never real numbers, the 2.5 million. But these numbers now exist in reality. And so anyone who doesn't take those into account, they're truly denying science and data.
But isn't this the problem? So what we're going to have now for 6 months and 60 years probably while we're debating this is all the politicians who shut down, they're going to say, listen, without me, without doing what I did, we would have had 50 gazillion deaths. I am the greatest humanitarian in the history of the world. I am the most wonderful hero you've ever seen.
Right. And then the Swedish chef is going, Verd de Verk. They're out back there saying, we didn't do anything. And there's an extreme example. That's an extreme example. Sweden, there's a middle ground. Sweden didn't even quarantine the sick, old people, or protect the vulnerable, but they're still better than a lot of places that did. South Korea didn't do a full shutdown. Now, granted, when people talk about contact tracing, this is something that really scares me. People just throw around contact tracing, like lead poisoning. Whoa, contact tracing. Is that not testicle retractingly scary? The idea of big tech companies tracking you in order to provide this information to the government. Are you aware that South Korean citizens were effectively doxxed? And we just throw it out there. What really concerns me with all of this, Michael, is I think kind of like, having worked in broadcasting for the longest time, there was the FCC, and you couldn't say certain words. And it was sort of a game of cat and mouse, and you dance up to the line. Okay. And we thought once that's gone with new media, we won't have these censors. We won't have these gatekeepers. Well, it got worse because now we're not censored by the FCC. We're censored by the mob. And I think we were always really concerned about government tyranny, about the removal of our rights, right, from a tyrannical government. But now we see that it's not the government that we need to be most concerned about. We should still be concerned about government, certainly not private industry, but it's the citizenry, it's the mob. And I'm not saying that all of these people are Nazis, okay? I want to be really clear. But when people say, how could that ever happen? How could a group of people ever be so vilified that people were willing to snitch on them and turn them into the SS? Well, I don't know. How could someone call the authorities to send men with guns after a mom for swinging her child in the park?
Yeah, it's happening all over the country, too. It's so all these snitch lines, de Blasio has one, which some of my listeners sent some lovely photographs to. I think other people did as well. You had this in Laredo, Texas. You had this in California. So you have all these snitch lines now. I remember when I saw the headline about the contact tracing, it said, Apple and Google team up. And I didn't even finish the headline. I saw Apple and Google team up. I said, get the go bag, get the car ready. We're getting the hell out of Dodge.
People were preparing for like some kind of an EMT attack or something when you watch Preppers, and you're like, no, it was just Tim Cook and Zuckerberg having a cocktail hour, and all of a sudden, all of our information is public and our rights are gone. Do you realize, people, it's the Dark Knight. Right, with Morgan Freeman saying you couldn't go this far with Christian Bale. Sorry, Bruce Wayne. I'm getting names and characters mixed up, the fictional and the reality. But he said, listen, this is a nanny state. We can't be doing this. We're at this point where people are demanding it, and so even if this government doesn't acquiesce to it, the next government can. Once you have that data, who believes that Apple and Facebook are going to destroy it? That's how they make money. That's how they track you down like Mrs. Pac-Man with advertisements for you every time you log in. You think they're all of a sudden going to just light it in a house fire after this? It is so terrifying to me that people are not only giving up civil rights with sort of a give and take, they're demanding that they be taken away from them. And it's crazy to me to see some of these conservatives out there who are still demanding it.
Well, that's the trouble. They're still demanding it. I get it. I'm willing to admit the states have a police power in times of war, in times of plague, right? Even the federal government has that power. So I get it. But now we have the data. The whole point of the lockdowns was don't overwhelm the hospital system and try to drag this thing out until we have a vaccine. We're not going to get a vaccine within a year, and the hospital system is not overwhelmed. All those in Javits Center, all that is empty. So now there is no argument for the lockdowns, and yet now you still have even conservatives saying we need to prolong it. Were you surprised at how fast the conservatives rolled over?
Some no, some yes. Yeah, some
Ooh.
no, some yes. I mean, I was pretty flippant about it, and at one point I remember behind the scenes going like, I don't know, is this going to be worse? And I said, you know
I hope
what?
I'm not wrong. Yeah.
I'm already in this now. So I just had to keep going with it. I had my doctor on, I had my personal physician on, and we did some bits, and it was kind of funny, but he talked about, early on, I told people, listen, I don't know why they're saying don't wear masks. I think it's because they need them for healthcare workers, but here's how you can make a mask at home. And by the way, I got that information from an article that was highlighted by the CDC years ago. So I was saying, they're telling you not to wear masks. If you wear a mask and it's 70% effective in filtering as you breathe in the air, and it's almost 100% effective in making sure that your airborne droplets don't make it out, well, I like those odds. I don't know why people are still trusting the medical establishment like these conservatives when they've been doing a flip-flop. They said don't wear masks. They said it couldn't be transmitted from human-to-human contact, the World Health Organization. Listen, YouTube and Facebook, they're saying we're going to remove anything that doesn't, that isn't in line, right? That isn't congruent with the World Health Organization standards. But hold on a second. What if they're wrong? Like when they said no human-to-human contact. Like, first off, does it even require a scientist? Does it even require a scientist to know that if a virus exists, you probably shouldn't be grabbing people's faces? Like, I read it back then going, okay, even if this is severe, and I didn't think it was going to be, you shouldn't be licking people's neck.
Right, of course. It's this bizarre thing where even the conservatives now are trusting governments that are changing their mind within 5 minutes. It's actually like 1984 to me. The mask thing was the best one because it was the Surgeon General tweets out, he goes, stop buying masks, multiple exclamation points. Then the next day, buy masks, right? It's like Oceania has always been at war with East Asia. Oceania, right? It's like totally Orwellian, and yet we're still trusting it. And amidst all of this, you've got the crazy coronavirus stuff. This is how whipped up into a frenzy we are, is that a few days ago, the US government came out and acknowledged, to my knowledge for the first time ever, that there are UFOs, that there are actual unidentified flying objects. And do you know what the reaction of most people was? Whatever. Let's keep talking about how Orange Man's
I guess
dead.
Tom from Blink-182 needed a win. And you know what? Frankly, I still think he's an idiot. But yeah, it's out there. It's like, this is kind of a big deal. That's sort of the equivalent to trying to release some news that you hope doesn't gain some steam on a Friday, right? Dump it on a Friday. It's like, UFOs, let's just dump it in a pandemic. Hope nobody notices.
It's like, wait, hold on, what did you say? I said don't wear masks. No, after that. Oh, I said wear masks. No, in the middle. The thing about the aliens, did you say anything about that?
No, I said scarf. And that's the thing too, when we're talking about masks, remember they were saying masks don't really work, they won't help you, they're not N95 respirators. They went from really it's of no use, talking about actual surgical masks that at this point you could purchase even though there were a shortage, to, well, a scarf is better than nothing. Hold on a second. Yep. You said that a surgical mask was dangerous. Now you're telling me to wear a Dr. Birx scarf? This is your solution? People should, I'm sorry, I'm not a medical authority, but this idea that only the scientists in charge can make inferences based on the data. No, I can look at the Surgeon General and say, you were wrong about masks, and now there are no masks, and you're telling us to use scarves or t-shirts. I was on my show 2 weeks before he came out and said that, and I said the most effective homemade masks the material you can use is a cotton poly blend t-shirt or an antimicrobial pillow, because you need 2 layers. And we showed people how to make an at-home mask. And we were very clear, this is not a respirator, but if you're in a house or if you have to go to work, it'll keep other people from getting sick. And if you all wear them, it'll improve your odds. And guess what happened? We were science deniers. And so I don't know about you, but I'm just leaning into this full tilt at this point when they say, remember, these people who said this about the coronavirus, they're just like the climate deniers. Yep. This guy right here, that's right. I am the same guy who does not believe that the Paris Protocol or Paris Agreement, was it Montreal Protocol, Kyoto Accord, Paris Agreement, whichever one Kyoto, it is now.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was a big thing. I was there in Cancun when Ted Turner suggested China's one-child policy. I was there, and he was on stage, and people were clapping like, he's suggesting that we drown babies in bed. Do you know what China does?
Why are you applauding this?
Yeah, I know, but I am that guy. Yep, I want everyone to remember this going into election, and I want you to remember when I say I don't think that the Paris Agreement is going to fix climate change or get China's ass in gear. I'm the same guy who said that this wasn't going to kill 2.5 million Americans. Throw that science denier label at me. I'm cool with it.
Did you see that the left now is trying to equate the two? So there's this guy, he wrote the most humiliating, embarrassing thing I've ever seen. He's the CNN chief climate correspondent, Bill Weir, and he wrote this whole letter to his son saying, son, his son's name is River, of course, and he goes, son, my dearest River, I'm so sorry that I caused the coronavirus with my pollution. And I thought, like, if you're not working in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, you did not cause the coronavirus. So, but he's saying that basically
either that or he's Count Dracula turning into a bat.
Yeah, that's right. That's the only way you're really responsible.
My dear River, I apologize for making it out and biting golden retriever. This coronavirus has gone straight to brain. I can no longer count.
Did you see that now the whole environmental religion is taking responsibility because they think that that we are the virus, the earth is very angry at us because of the sea turtles or something. And so the earth invented coronavirus to get back at us, which made me think, if the earth is going to unleash coronavirus on us, it's all out war, man. Bring on the pollution. Like, forget about recycling now. We've got to kill the earth.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, who's keeping their eye on those sea turtles? That could be the greatest coup in animal kingdom history. Lay low for about 2,500 years, however long they live, and then they just start crawling ashore. It's like the Blob, only there's millions of them. Who is keeping their eye on the sea turtles? You know, it's gotten to a certain point. I don't know about you two, when we talk about the environmentalism stuff for coronavirus, I'm team people. I go to the zoo now. I go with my nephew and niece. Everything's endangered. I saw a sparrow. It's like endangered. What? That's not even a part of the zoo. It's unreal to, and I don't care. Like, listen, okay, Sumatran tigers are the thing now. Is it Sumatran? One of the tigers are like, there aren't enough. I'm like, there are hundreds of thousands of tigers. Oh, there aren't that specific breed of tiger? Oh, screw them. I don't really care. Are there Siberian tigers? Oh, listen, let's just make up for it with other man-killing monster machines. I don't care enough anymore. At a certain point, I'm out of craps to give, and that's where I am. We have been lied to so much about this virus right now. And here's the thing. Yeah, obviously some people will die from this virus, and that's terrible, just like it's terrible when it happens with the flu. And by the way, it is more comparable to the flu than the 4 to 7% death rate that they quoted. Well, think about that.
How dare you?
On a line graph, the people who said, it's a flu, they were banned from Facebook and social media. They weren't allowed a seat at the table. The Imperial College study said it would have, if I'm not mistaken, the estimates with Fauci were 4 to 7% death rate. If you find that dot on that line graph, it would overlap with the people who said it's more comparable to the flu. It wouldn't even be close to the 4 to 7% wing. But here's something that we do know. 1 in 5 deaths are linked to unemployment. And we have the highest unemployment since the Great Depression. Again, this is real life, real world data that is undeniable. Now, someone can deny, as I did. I'll be the first to admit it. I was a denier. I said, there's no way. 2.5 million deaths? There's no way. There's no way it's going to be 200,000 deaths. No way. I was a denier. Granted, now these people are denying the fact that this massive unemployment will lead to record suicides, will lead to record depression and mental health issues. All of a sudden, where are the leftists who want to talk about mental health issues every time someone, there's a mass shooting? They want to talk about taking away guns and making sure that every single kid has a hefty dose of Prozac. So where are they now? When we know what unemployment does, and that's because as conservatives, we understand that human beings want to work, want to innovate. Since we're created in God's image, we are designed with a purpose. And this right now is removing, in the modern world, a lot of humanity's purpose. And I'm really scared as to what that'll bring.
How much of this whole alarmism do you think comes back to this fact that right now people are extremely uncomfortable with death? I mean, you said that people are going to die. Obviously, people die whenever there's a public health problem. But we seem so unaware that we're all going to die. No one here gets out alive. That Andy Cuomo said, if we save one life, it's all worth it, even if we end up killing 50,000 more people because of our measures.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how fragile they are. I mean, you're basically a walking bag of fluid and meat. Like, it's very easy to break you or myself, and I work out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's harder to break you. I mean,
no, it's very easy. It's very easy. That's why, as human beings, we've evolved to use our brains, and we have an economy, and we have jobs, and we have a voluntary exchange of goods and services. That's also why I want to keep my eye on the tigers and the sea turtles because they can just destroy us very easily.
Yeah.
We walk through life blissfully unaware. I have a dog, Betty, and she's still a year and a half. She's a puppy. She's an idiot. And she's like 95 pounds. And I saw her ripping apart a toy the other day, and I watched her just run across the backyard. And I said, my God, if she just realized what she could do to us, we live by her mercy. In the middle of the night, it would be like Ghost in the Darkness. And you'd have the lamp, the shadow on the wall, just the blood spatter. Like all the time we face death. This idea that there is no acceptable risk. Yeah. Every day that we leave our house, we are making a judgment as to whether A, B, C is or which of these options is the most acceptable risk. And we make that decision. And I made that decision early on with this virus where I came into the office, I spoke with everyone. This is one thing I will say we didn't do. I wanted everyone to lick a popsicle stick. So it's sort of like a coronavirus Blood Brothers where we would just get it over with. And my half-Asian lawyer said no. He said it was a liability. But I came in, I said, listen, do we all agree that there's an acceptable risk right now versus unacceptable? And we said, yeah. And we all came right in and we went to work and not even a sniffle. So it's unreal to me. This is about politics, and this is something else too. This is a little conspiratorial of me, and I'm curious. You're more of a wonk than I am. So you tell me if you think that there's any validity to this. Nancy Pelosi, the one who said go out and eat out in Chinatown, and I think March 2nd or March 4th.
On Chinese New Year.
By the way, you shouldn't eat in Chinatown ever. Not only this March, you shouldn't ever eat in Chinatown because they don't use refrigeration. Now,
it's kind of always a public health risk. Yeah,
absolutely. Are you saying it? Well, no. Listen, it's not. I'm not saying it's because of their race. I'm saying it's because of decisions they've made in that particular municipality, that eight block radius, where they've decided to forego refrigeration. I don't know. Maybe they have barrels of salt and they're doing the old Christopher Columbus preservation. I have no idea. I just advise against eating in Chinatown. But they want to, I think it was Nancy Pelosi, if I'm not mistaken, who said $2,000 a month. Was it her who proposed that?
That's right. Yep.
Think about this for a second. Okay. We had the best economy, it's undeniable, right, before this pandemic in modern American history, possibly American history ever. And even though we know that it's a myth where they would always say, the average income actually hasn't outpaced inflation, Bernie Sanders would say that. And we know that they're using the metric of average hourly income as opposed to average individual earnings, which would be taken into account the entire year. And that's different because, listen, typically a job, let's say you work at McDonald's at a drive-thru, that's really not worth a huge raise today compared to yesterday. But when you look at average individual income, that person goes from drive-thru to shift manager to maybe owning a franchise. That being said, for the first time ever, average hourly earnings, meaning that person didn't move up. That person was so incompetent, they just stayed there slapping together a fillet of fish, forgetting the cheese for years to come, was going up at record pace. It was outpacing 5%. So right now, I think the Democrats have a decision to make, and they have to go, hold on a second, either people can go back to their jobs and see the real world income benefits that everyone was seeing, not to mention what's actually left after taxes, or we can keep them home, keep them away from the reality of the workforce, and give them $2,000 a month. That's the only way I think they can win this election.
Yeah, of course. And it's all just about entrapping people in this system, not even of, I give you this and you feel good about me. It's a system of entitlement, right? You actually want to encourage the idea of entitlement because that idea of entitlement will ultimately help the left-wing agenda. And so I think that's what they're trying to do. You also see it in this breakdown of social institutions. So the left has obviously gone after the family, but they've gone after local governance, they've gone after community attachments, right? As the federal government grows, as the state grows, all those other attachments shrink. And so all you're left with eventually is the individual and the state. And you've got this individual now who is literally locked up in his apartment, very often alone, very often without any system of support, can't go out and make any money. The only group he can turn to, because all the other organizations have been so weakened, is the state. It's the federal government. I mean, it reminds me in 2012 of Barack Obama's campaign, The Life of Julia, where he had this fictional woman, and the only meaningful relationship she ever had cradle to grave was with the government, which, by the way, was so honest of their view of the world that they actually scrubbed the damn thing from the internet. You can't find it anywhere.
I know you can't find that anywhere. I do have a question, though. Why does it have to be a he stuck in his apartment, in your analogy? Michael Knowles? Why couldn't it be Eloise in the Upper East Side? I think you're absolutely right. And it is, it's a crime against humanity to remove people's hope. And this is, for the party that was all hope and change, it is remarkable to me that they are now saying there is no hope for you unless you stay home and take a check from the government. That is the message right now.
Right.
In Texas, where they're saying, hey, we're going to open up, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with this, and we're going to have Greg Abbott, Governor Greg Abbott, I guess I have to say, on the show on Thursday with this live stream. I don't necessarily know that I agree with opening businesses up at 25% capacity because then you kind of have them half in, half out, where they may not get the unemployment checks or the stimulus checks, but they're not really making enough to make a profit. But you know what? Actually, let me go on that point. When people say the new normal, this just goes to show you the disconnect between what can I say on this show?
You can say whatever you want, Stephen. Worst case, which word? Say it again.
Prick. Can I say prick?
Prick. Well, you said it, so I guess.
Well, you kind of, what choice did I have? You asked me. These entitled pricks have no idea as to what it means to be a business owner. When they say, well, there's going to be a new normal, restaurants and sports arenas are going to have to operate at 55 to 62% capacity. Profit margin much? Do you think that every single restaurant out there, do you think that they can just chop their revenue in half? Do you have any idea how much they make during their peak hours when they book tables? Do you think that UT Austin, by the way, where my brother went, I think they have 105,000 seats at their stadium. You think you cut that down to 60,000 that you're going to be able to support the athletics program? People saying, well, this is just going to have to be the new normal and you'll have to survive. That's because you're the kind of person who wants a government check. You don't know what normal is for someone who actually creates jobs. And listen, business owners like myself, I always say I sign the fronts of checks, not the backs of checks. I'm glad to create jobs. These are the people, these are the first people I think about when I get up in the morning, the last people before I go to bed. That being said, people need to understand and be grateful that jobs are being created willingly out there in a free enterprise market. And nothing bothers me more than there's going to have to be a new normal. No, there will have to not be a new normal.
Well, this is what people say when they don't have any idea how businesses work. So you had this idea at the beginning of the shutdown. They said, oh, look, these businesses, they're rich. That local business, they're always full of customers. I'm sure they can probably float their business for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months without any revenue. And you think what margins do you think businesses are operating on? Especially restaurants in particular. Restaurants generally are operating on razor thin margins. All of a sudden you're going to go in and say, okay, you can reopen. We're going to stop giving you the money that actually we probably haven't been giving you for the past 3 weeks because it's too hard to get the SBA loan. But we're going to let you reopen and you're allowed to have 4 customers a day. Okay, good luck. Bye.
Right. Yeah, and this is a perfect example where people say you're a science denier or why are you denying the experts? Aaron Sorkin, there was a quote from him. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's after I read it, I said, well, I'm done with this guy, where he said, I don't want the unintelligent. I don't want the everyman running the country. I want the hyper-intellectuals who go to Ivy League. Hold on a second. Okay, these are the experts. So we've just gone through the experts in science. Now we go through the experts in the economy who say this is what we have to do. There can be a bakery, there can be an Italian restaurant owner in Queens. And he's not an expert, but he can say, but my perishability. You don't even understand the concept of perishability at this point. Float it for 6 months. How do they have any product if they don't even know what inventory they need to keep? By the way, a lot of businesses have to borrow money to pay for inventory the next quarter or to pay taxes. People have no idea how difficult it is to run a business. And so when the Democrats come out and say, we're pro-small business, just not pro-big business. No, right now, in my neck of the woods, guess what? I can go to Costco. I can get takeout from Taco Bell, Wendy's, I think Chili's, every place, but I can't go to my local bakery. Yeah, we get it, Pelosi. You're the party of small business, provided they're giving you free dumplings in Chinatown.
Yeah, it's you'd think Pelosi, since she's Italian, she would at least be able to understand that Italian word, my perishability, but she doesn't even understand what it means.
She's Italian? She's Olive Garden Italian. I had no idea.
Yeah, she's not that high quality stuff.
She's the only Italian that I know who was denied communion. Was it from the Vatican? They said, no, we're not going to let her in. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, there are a lot of problems at the Vatican, but at least they got that one right. Moving forward, how do we get out of this? Do we survive or are we actually in this new normal and say goodbye to our sort of American traditions and go sit in your pod and eat bugs and listen to what Gavin Newsom tells you to do?
No, I think we're going to go back to normal. I really do. I think that honestly, probably in 2 months' time, people are going to go, remember the coronavirus thing? I think that's what's going to happen. People say, that was a sham. Not saying the virus is a hoax, not saying the virus doesn't exist, but that it was probably one of the most overreactive responses that we've seen from the government. I think this will be a case study actually going forward in knee-jerk reactions. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of legwork to do before we get to that, and I think that we need conservatives to make sure that we all build our case here and do it in edifying the American worker. That's how Donald Trump became president, right? Listen, how do you have a billionaire who's never, ever lived a day in his life without immense privilege? How do you have a guy like that relate more to the average middle American worker? Well, that's because the Democrats are the party of people like Pelosi, right? They're so out of touch. They don't understand. Well, I think actually they do understand. Donald Trump is appealing to the middle-class American worker, but he's appealing to the middle-income person who wants to work. The current Democratic Party is appealing to people who don't want to work and they want to take a check. Listen, this is one of the big myths that the Republicans are the party of the rich. Well, okay, let's use that premise. If they're the party of the rich and we have a country where presidents are won by an electoral college, but generally at least a plurality of the vote, they have a vested interest in keeping you rich. Otherwise, they never win an election again. If Democrats are the party of the poor, they have a vested interest in keeping you poor. And if I were to devise a plan to guarantee that more Americans stay poor, I don't know that I could come up with one more effective than stay home and we're going to up it to $2,000 a month.
Yeah, that's right. And stay home until Election Day, and then come out and vote for us. Actually, they can do mail-in ballots soon, too. That's going to be their next scheme. Stephen, I got to let you go. Stephen Crowder, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, sir. Be well.
If you enjoyed that break from the disinformation, the historical revision, and the screaming about the end of the world, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another video.